Grief Notes and Animal Dreams. The fire the pack rat started destroyed the house my father built and killed my mother. Its aftermath sits in me like a drought. And I, a forest creature grown among mists between creek beds, where if water evaporates it's only for a few hours of rest in another state, as if to catch a little sleep before falling again. I keep expecting the drought to end. It's as if grief sucked the green world inside out, down through its roots, into a closed and cryptic seed, ran gratitude backwards like a movie rewinding. Now in my dream the treeless hills are arid, and below the cellar, under the house, the earth is tunneled, as if a mine started there, and out of the passage parched animals emerge. First a deer, terribly close to death. Upstairs a little water spills through the cracks, floor to floor, when the family washes dishes, and I see a silver rivulet bead and twist as it slips between the planks, but the air in the cellar vacuums it up. The animals from underground come with tongues white and crystallized like pieces of Turkish delight. Despite the drought, I find a working garden hose, the alligator kind Mother went after when she, safely outside, remembering water in the greenhouse off Father's bedroom, ran back inside. The kind of hose clearly in her mind when the inferno filled the hall, and she crawled along the floor beneath 10 feet of flame that tore the skin from her back, devoured the flesh off her feet. A fire so hot it crumbled slabs of granite 6 inches thick, melted brass, left her with 3rd-degree burns to more than 50% of her body. I hold a running garden hose in the cellar, and a silvery-eyed doe, leaning against the hard-packed dirt tunnel, lets me fill her mouth, but she can't swallow. In my dream I taste the brine dissolving round her tongue, so absolutely stiff with salt the first water that hits it turns caustic. And it takes a minute, because the drought and the dream slow my mind, before I realize she need not swallow it. I have in my hands a running hose, though outside the hillside is brown and treeless, and I don't know where the water comes from. I am able to rinse her mouth again, and again, if need be, until it softens, and she can swallow. In the time of the dying of mothers. The black cat has crept up to lie between our waists. I am not sleeping and feel her warm against my hip. She is licking her paws between the claws. I can tell by the way her back shifts and the snuffling noises she makes. She has lived with you longer than I have. Billy, because she is black and she is beautiful. Mink, Mother's Burmese, and earlier Tilly, Mink's tabby mother, and before Tilly, Apricot, the apricot point Siamese, and Kimchi, the loutish Siamese, and Tiny, the huge Persian. Generations of cats. Mother's shadows as she moved through the house. Standing at the mahogany counter, cutting raw liver on an arborite square, talking baby talk to Mink, who is stretching her neck to rub it against Mother's shins. If Mink had not died earlier that year, she would have caught the pack rat who chewed the insulation and shorted the wires. The fire would not have started. My mother might still be alive. A duster in hand, pensively shaking it out a casement window. So many gestures, memories, sifting flour onto a sheet of wax paper, refolding the paper in quarters, leaving it in the sifter. A smooth rock that fits into my palm, walking on the beach at Boundary Bay, Mother hands me flat stones, smooth stones. I keep the softest oval, my soft stone, smooth as skin, but cool. Thick skins broken, piled on the kitchen counter, oil of oranges in the air after breakfast. I do not have another mother. My aunts have died, even my mother-in-law. Lilacs by the driveway, African violet on the table, homemade oat cakes cut in triangles, silver knives rolled in red flannel, white porcelain sink on its pedestal, head over the sink as she poured vinegar through my hair, scent and smart of vinegar, rinsing dark hair till it squeaked. Windbreak of poplars around a farmyard, walking to visit a woman who had wicker furniture in her front room, sitting on the floor in a sunny corner while Mother talked, playing with buttons from a round tin with a painted plaid ribbon. The delta cut up now, trees felled, stumps bulldozed, its deep ditches filled in. Ditches where people drowned each year, gone. Potato fields gone to houses. Blueberries torn up. Malls. Garden condominiums. 3 college campuses. Highways. The buttons seemed to be mine. Mother's friend lifted the tin down for me each time. Pins in her mouth when she sewed, pinned up a hem, pursing her lips, repinning as I turned slowly. A friend showed me a dress her mother made for her just a few years ago, spreading it out on the bed, smoothing an arm under it to show me the print, the drift of cotton over skin. Our mothers made us many dresses, outfitted us. It is as if here in the middle of life I have wandered into a deep forest. Musty, fungus-laden spars crisscross a bog where my feet sink unevenly and no log is solid for its full length. I dream of refugees. When I stop sleeping, there is our body warmth, the breathing, a nest on the surface of the dark. This can't be the desert of the mystics, because love keeps me company, and the black cat has come in the window. Through my enchantment of grief, Mother's sharp whistle, 2 fingers under her tongue. Come home now, come home. There is no place like home. Come home, spirit, knocking on doors, out on the streets in your slip. Maxie's wake. Standing about in her front room, 2 bed sheets of light, neat ironed squares, hung on the walls opposite the mullioned beach window and the east window. Sunshine gone to cotton without her conversation. Squares and sandwiches, champagne, grieving in a grey suit with a purple belt, drinking enough to feel it. Maxie gave things away if she hadn't used them in 2 years, slept under a rosary, said the nuns in their grey habits taught her the art of flirting. Divorced at 23 in Vienna, she went with her father, a surgeon, to China. In Shanghai, married my uncle, who stood 6'4" and rode horseback across Mongolia. With a baby, escaping a revolution, came by sea to Canada. In a logging camp, lived for the first time without servants. Preferred a pebble beach, sitting on the floor, a smaller fire. Took her son to Austria. Again, war broke out. Walked across the Alps, then sailed back to the coast. Taxed her heart daily, swam in the ocean May through September. Selected friends carefully. Liked Buddhists. Charmed people by choice. Loved until their deaths her husband with Parkinson's and an Englishman who kept her garden. The best years for a woman, she said, are those between 40 and 60. The last time she let me see her, Maxie and I sat, each with a gin and tonic under her patio umbrella, as she explained, life is not worth living without love, that I must have her clothes, and how she'd organized her death. The doctors spoke of an operation, but I said no. Waves tame and distant. She reached over and rearranged the florist's pink roses. Jane, she said, I have adored my life. Bordering her white shack, as she called it, meticulous bluebells, poppies, lavender clumps, ocean beyond the rockery, and Maxie, slender, ironic, stretched out with a book in her hand and the sun in her face. Romance. Falling in love with him pulled me out of myself like pulling a wet hand out of a leaking rubber glove. I would say it had nothing to do with him. The glove fell away from my grasp, inside out. He seized upon a woman I hadn't allowed myself to be. A snake drops its former cover, crumpled skin. I'd say it wasn't him I needed, but me. A snake splits when it's ready, naturally. Falling in love with him did what seeing mystic lights, listening to good advice, reading novels hadn't accomplished. That wildness. Of course it had to do with him. We flew out of wet gloves, bare hands gesturing. Do you know de Sanoqua's mask, Old Woman of the Woods? Falling in love, I paid tribute to a cannibal spirit. Little piles of gloves, marigold, pink, yellow, in the woods below her black face, her mouth like an O. Woodbox. If time is a local muscle, bound to the bone it moves. If time bears itself as a zygote does a baby. If time curls round us like the jet stream circulating atoms of oxygen in and out of bodies. I wouldn't ask, except I dreamt of fire, dreamt twice. Not on the flat screen of my darkened mind. I dreamt of fire in virtual reality, dreamt, then woke, and still the dream went on. Fire drifted, fingered things, claimed this and that, ran along beams, scrambled up logs, then, convinced, drove a route through the floor, burst amaryllis above the roof. Smoke like a wool rug about my shoulders, choked, sitting upright, eyes open, staring at floating petals of flame. Father! The cry I tried to make. When the dream left me in my own home, in a body I could move, room to room I checked on sleeping children. 5 months earlier, the first blaze sprinted across the drapes. I stumbled to the window, shook the pleats, then waking further saw only moonlight spattered on the walls. Did I know, foresee the fire in my parents' home, my mother's death? The oldest brain projects a web, then sways in the middle of her trap. Outfoxing logic, our dream maker winds a silver screen limb to limb and catches the fog of a dripping forest. Surely the house fire was not time's arson. And my mother's action, her plunge into the burning house to grab a hose, sprang true, her free, predictable response. Ashes, ashes in my hand. Fire terrifies me, for myself, for my family. Maybe love is coal or oil or gas, and I am wood, laid between